Hi, it's Dorothy Guining with Scrapbooking Quebec. In this video, I'll be creating a double-page spread featuring Stampin' Up's Violet Dreams and Wood Grain Wonders Designer Series paper packs and a handful of tools. Also, I will be demonstrating a few simple techniques done with basic supplies that will elevate your layouts, sunbursts, pockets, and interactive tags. Here is my inspiration, a sketch from the Spring-Summer 2025 Scrapbook and Cards Today magazine and its interpretation by Wendy Sue Anderson. The sketch has lots of design elements that I often use, including a map that spans across the two pages and a vertical row that transects it. But it also challenges me with that sunburst, pocket, and interactive tags. Everything I use will be listed below along with my link to Stampin' Up. If you live in Canada and use the link, I will get a commission. And if you do, thank you very, very much. So let's jump right in. You're going to see I have a handful of photos. That's me with friends at a rodeo. Also on my table, I have half of the Violet Dreams Designer Series Specialty Paper Pack. I'm pointing out my hat, which is purple, which is why I selected this collection of paper. I'm showing you both sides. This paper pack comes with 10 pattern papers, 2 of each of what you see on my table, plus 2 sheets of punch-out ephemera pieces. These are full of florals, tags, frames, leaves, all kinds of stuff like that. And you can see I punched some out and I will be digging into that later on. Now, at first glance, this paper pack has absolutely nothing to do with the rodeo. I selected it because of the purple. So now what I want to do is kind of bring it back to earth. So you can see I have some wood grains in front of me. That is from Stampin' Up's Wood Grain Wonders Designer Series paper pack. It basically has discrete wood grains in neutrals. I'm also bringing in some solids. So I have Secret Sea, Gorgeous Grape, and Willow White. And I have a handful of tools, and we'll look at those later on in the process when I embellish my page. So the first thing you're going to see is I narrowed down my selection of paper. So I have a floral and a polka dot, both from the Violet Dreams paper pack. I have wood grain paper. I have crumb cake and pecan pie from the Wood Grain Wonders paper pack. And I have my solid cardstock. So what I want to do right now is basically play around a bit with these papers to set up my foundation page before I cut into the paper. Now, if you look at the sketch, which will briefly be in that top left corner, there is a map that spans across the 2 pages, but it is different on the right than it is on the left. So you can see on the left, I have a floral and I have a very contrasting white cardstock on the right, which is really quite different for me. For the border that transects the map that spans the 2 pages, I have that Secret Sea two-tone cardstock. That's going to house a row of photos like on the sketch. And I will have 2 photos on the right. Mine is a vertical and a horizontal. In the sketch, they are both horizontal. So I'm just making the sketch work for me. I will add a little narrow strip of that polka dot paper, but the Gorgeous Grape and that pecan pie wood grain, I'm going to be reserving that for punches of color a bit later on. You can see off camera, I did cut up my papers and I'm just placing them on the page. I did ink up the edges of the pattern paper, so that polka dot paper and the floral. And the ink I used was pecan pie from Stampin' Up. And now what I'm going to do is place my photos on the page. At one point, I think Chester comes back in and I have to actually stop the camera and pay a bit of attention to him. I think it's here I do that. Anyway, you can see I also have 2 extra photos there just above that horizontal photo on the right. What I'm going to be doing with that is creating tags for those later on in the process, drawing inspiration from my sketch. I guess it wasn't here that Chester joined me, but he's been in and out of this video throughout the entire thing. You can see me bringing in that Gorgeous Grape two-tone cardstock and that pecan pie wood grain paper. What I'm trying to do now is decide what I want to create my sunburst with. The purple is great, but I think I'm going to reserve that for my embellishing. I really want to bring in that earthy look. So what I'm going to do is create a simple sunburst with that Wood Grain Wonders paper in Pecan Pie. So to create a very simple sunburst, basically what I'm doing is cutting 2-inch strips of paper. I'm going to cut this in half. What I need here is 2 inches by 6 inches. So I need this a few times. And then you're going to see me put it in the trimmer on an angle. And what I'm doing here is creating 2 kind of wonky triangles. It's that easy to create a sunburst. So I'm going to do this a few more times here, and then you're going to see me come back and all of these triangles are inked up once again with Pecan Pie ink. So here I go. I have all of my triangles all inked up. Now what I'm going to do is create a sunburst over on the left page following my sketch, and there I go, just tucking it underneath. Again, super easy to create a sunburst. Just cut yourself some wonky triangles and then place them so that they span out in a sunburst. I tucked them underneath the border and nothing has adhered at this point. I'll do that a little bit later on. You can see I have some 12-inch narrow strips of paper. One of them there is in gold. That I selected gold. I only want a little narrow bit of it, but I do know my embellishments are going to have gold accents. That's why I selected that gold metallic paper. I only want there to be a little hint of it, however. Also, if you look at the sketch, there are horizontal narrow strips across that mat on the right page. So I cut myself some strips in that floral paper and the pecan pie, and now it is all basically set up. This is what my foundation page is going to look like. You can also see that I double matted my photos. I needed mats underneath the white mats for the right page, so that is in Secret C. And now what you see me doing is additioning paper to place behind those 2 unmatted photos. If you look at the sketch, there are basically tags or photos coming out from above that photo on the far right. I'm going to be creating tags. Now, I have a tag die. I showed it to you. That is from Tim Holtz from my stash. But here I'm going to show you how to create a super easy tag if you do not have dies. Basically, I have a rectangle of paper. I fold it over without creasing it, snip the corners, and I have a perfect tag. I can make that in whatever size I want. Then I take a hole punch and I simply punch a hole in the middle and I have a tag. It is that easy. So what I'm going to do is cut myself some tags in that gorgeous grape because I really do want to introduce that purple on my layout, but I want to introduce it in smaller bits, almost like an accent. So you can see off camera, I cut myself 2 tags, I adhered my photos on top of it, and basically what I'm going to do now is adhere that photo and create a pocket. What I also did off camera was I did adhere all of my papers on the foundation page, all of my photos, except this one I'm adhering right now. And what I'm doing right now is showing you how to create a pocket. I am using Stampin' Up's Tear and Tape, which is a heavy-duty tape, great for anything interactive, including a pocket. To create a pocket, you place adhesive on 3 sides of your element, leaving one side open to create the opening of a pocket. You may notice for me, I put the bottom adhesive halfway up the photo. That's because I don't want to lose my entire tag behind the photo. I want it to sit at the bottom, which is halfway across that horizontal photo, because I do want the photos to peek out from above that pocket. That's why I created the bottom of the pocket halfway through the photo. That tear and tape is super sticky, so I adhere that off camera. I just wanted to make sure it was nice and straight. And now I have my pocket, so I'm going to place those tags there. I did trim the bottom of those tags just so that I could have it come up at different levels. And you can also see off camera I created another tag a bit smaller, and that has my journaling on it. I basically did it on the computer, printed it up, and then cut it out with a tag. So now I have these really fun interactive tags that pop out from above that photo on the right. Now let's have a look at my embellishments. And these first two trays are ephemera pieces that come from the Violet Dreams Specialty Designer Series paper pack. That's the same printed paper I'm using on my foundation page. There are frames, labels, flowers, leaves, and all different sizes, and they come on 2 punch-out sheets as part of that Designer Series paper pack. On the next tray, you're going to see I have more labels, and for these ones, I created them with Stampin' Up's hot foil system. I did do a demonstration on my channel how to use the hot foil system, which works with Stampin' Up's die cutting system, and that video is listed and linked below. But you can see I have labels there, and I'm covering them up right now, but around the edges are nice gold detailing. The platform for the hot foil system is in my hand, and it also works with specific tools. The tool I have in my hand there is called Flourish and Frame Hot Foil Dies. That particular one is a bundle, so you actually have the image transfer dies along with cutting dies. Now I am showing you some wagon wheels. I do want some theme-specific embellishments for this layout. To create the wagon wheels, I used Stampin' Up's Gears and Textures bundle, and in the die set there are tons of gear dies along with chains and all kinds of stuff. I took the largest gear die, I cut it out in a crumb cake paper, then I cut that out with circle die. So basically it cut off all the nubs and it made a perfect little wagon wheel. I did rub a bit of pecan pie ink on top of it, and I did cut out some pecan pie wagon wheels as well. On the next here, you're going to see I have another purple tag. You can see on the right page, I already have 2 purple tags with photos. Well, I'm going to want to repeat that somewhere on the left, so I made myself another tag. And for my title, I also used Stampin' Up's hot foil system. For this one, the bundle I used is called Luxe Alphabet Dies and Numbers Hot Foil Die. So basically, I sorry, that came out funny. I transferred gold foil in an alphabet on top of gorgeous grape two-tone cardstock. Then I die cut it with coordinating die. So it's purple with gold around the lettering. In addition to that, I'm going to have another word in my title. My title is going to be Hello Rodeo 2026. And for hello, I used a retired paper pumpkin die set called Circle of Seasons. So that's what I'm showing you right now. I cut that out in a textured metallic cardstock, a retired paper from Stampin' Up. In addition to all of this, I'm showing you I have some cowboy boots and cowboy hats in gorgeous grape and pecan pie. And for these, I used a retired stamp and die bundle from close to my heart called Life in Boots. What I'm going to do right now is tidy all of this up and start creating my clusters. And the first thing I'm going to do is place that purple tag on the left page. Again, I want a repeat of the tags that are on the right. Then what I will do is take the labels that I created with the hot foil system, and I'm going to place them in 3 places across the 2 pages, establishing 3 areas where I will be creating clusters to form a visual triangle. These are all in different sizes. I'm going with the Secret C, and you can see the gold all around the outer edges. And now what I'm going to do is just kind of work on it. Basically, I'm going to have a large cluster with the title in the middle of that sunburst. That's where you see me placing the word rodeo. And then I will have a repetition of that, a fairly large cluster that's going to hug the bottom right corner. In that one, you will see me place the date. I often do that where I have the title on one page and a repetition of that on the opposite page, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. You can see Hello Rodeo on the left, and I will be placing 2026 on the right. Then what I'm going to do is build from there. What I will do is take out the cowboy hat. So I put a cowboy hat on the cluster around the title on the left. And then I'm going to take two cowboy hats, one in purple and one in pecan pie, and I'm going to stack them on top of one another on the right. If you look at one of my photos, I'm in front of a vendor and there are stacks of hats, and that was what I was trying to copy here. I don't know if I'm succeeding, but that is where my inspiration came from. And then what I will do is continue to build from there. But at this point, I have two pecan pie pieces, cowboy hats, in each one of the clusters. So immediately I feel like I need that in the third smaller cluster. I don't have another pecan pie hat, so I tuck in these boots, but it's really not making sense to me because they are so big. I have to tuck them either behind a photo or a tag, and it just doesn't make sense. So at this point, I decide to forget about that smaller cluster on the top of the right page and just work on my main clusters. And then I will go back and just add a hint of a third cluster at the end of the video. So as you can see, I'm tucking in more pieces in the clusters. At this point, it's wagon wheels. I always start with the bigger pieces and gradually get smaller. The wagon wheels stay there for a while, but you're going to see I do abandon them a bit later on in the process. Now I'm coming in with the smaller bit. So basically, I'm tucking in some of those ephemera leaves and the flowers. So I'm doing that over on the right, and I'm more or less happy with that. But when I jump to the left page, I don't really like what I'm seeing. And I do want to point this out. When I am building my clusters, what I'm really trying to do is get an idea of what's going in the cluster, how big the clusters are going to be, where I'm going to place them. But when it comes time to adhering, I always tweak them and I often change them. So I really don't want to waste a lot of time here. So I'm just trying to get an idea of what's going in the clusters, where my titles are going to go, how big they're going to be. And when it comes time to adhering, I will do some tweaking and some finishing touches. At this point, I'm not particularly thrilled with the cluster on the left, but again, I know I'm going to tweak it when I adhere it. So I am jumping ahead and I'm going to start adhering the cluster in the bottom right. You can see I'm adhering my alphas. When I created those numbers and letters, I backed the foiled paper in adhesive sheets from Stampin' Up. I often do that. Then I ran it through my die cutting machine. So my alphas and numbers are adhesive backed. That's what you see me doing. I continue doing that off camera. You can see I have my title on both of them. And for each one of them, I did back them with scrap cardstock so that I could add some foam adhesive. I didn't want the paperweight to have foam adhesive and then kind of bend and warp. So by adding scrap cardstock behind it, it just gave it a little bit more substance. And you can see for 2024, I did add some foam adhesive behind it. So now you can see I am adhering. I have the hats there. I'm now putting the year 2024 on that foiled label popped up with some foam adhesive. I tucked in some leaves. You're going to see me come in with the wagon wheels as well. Again, they stay there for a while, but as I tweak, eventually those wagon wheels in that large cluster on the right get dropped. So I continued adhering that. You can see I'm just pointing out that I did pop up that label with foam adhesive. I'm showing you that at this point I do have the wagon wheels. I also popped up one of the tiny little flowers in that floral cluster above the purple hat. Now what I'm going to do is move ahead and start working on the cluster on the left page. So I have that label there. I'm going to overlap the label with the title on top of it. That one is not popped up on foam adhesive because what I will end up doing is, first of all, overlapping the word hello from the tag underneath it on top of that label. So I didn't want there to be a difference in height because hello wouldn't have adhered very well to the page, but I will end up popping up a cowboy hat on foam adhesive, which is just going to kind of overlap the label with the title. You can see Chester has come once again for another visit. I have a few leaves there just above the cowboy hat. I'm putting in a little flower, but at this point, as I'm tweaking, I am going to add a little floral cluster right underneath the word rodeo in the middle. And at that point, the floral cluster on top is bothering me because it's like one is lined up right under the other and it looks kind of weird. I want them to be at an angle. So there you see me fooling around with it. I stop the camera, and if you look at it, you can see the leaves and the flower above that cowboy hat are now at an angle to the leaves and the flower underneath the word rodeo. Also, you may notice I do not have any wagon wheels. Originally, I had wagon wheels there, but I ended up removing them. So when I didn't add it to the cluster with the title, then I went over to the cluster that I made on the right and I ended up removing those wagon wheels. That's just how it goes sometimes for me when I am building clusters. Again, I tweak when I adhere. Now I want to add a third cluster. So I have that other label, again, made with the hot foil system, but this one is smaller. So for this one, I think I'm going to add it almost like a tab coming out from the photo. And basically, this is just kind of an addition to those tags there. So I'm just want something very, very small here to add to those tags in that area and kind of a repetition in a third spot of those labels. I do want something in pecan pie there. I've got the cowboy hats in both of the other clusters. I tried the boots again, just too big. So in the end, I do add a wagon wheel. This one is in pecan pie, so I'm happy with that. It's quite subtle. Now you see me placing just a few leaves and a flower. Again, simply a small repetition of the two other clusters. The other thing I want to do is to finish off my tags. At this point, there's nothing on them, so I'm getting out this trim. It's called Irregular Weave Trim. I have no idea if it's still available, but I absolutely love it. It was something that was sold in the autumn last year. So I'm just kind of stringing it through my tags there, and you can see I have access to those tags from the top of my page protector, or I will when I put it in a page protector. But basically, that is it. Here is my finished layout. Off camera, I finished my tags. I tied bows with twine just to secure the trim in place. And now viewers will be able to pull those tags from the top of the page protector. A really super fun interactive element. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd greatly appreciate a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, Scrapbooking Quebec, I would be thrilled if you did. And if you are a subscriber, thank you very, very much. As I mentioned in the intro, everything I used is listed below along with my link to Stampin' Up. If you live in Canada and use the link, I will get a commission. Please know that I appreciate your support very, very much. Have a great day, and I will see you soon on YouTube. Bye-bye.